Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has begun facing lawmakers today to explain the management of last month's catastrophic flooding that left 226 people dead. The flooding, of course, wrecking infrastructure, gutting buildings and inundating fields. But it also sparked a lot of outrage at the authorities for their perceived mismanagement. One minister in the past has even acknowledged that many of the deaths were avoidable. But already Sanchez has been defending the government's record to that hearing.
The government had two main responsibilities. The first is to generate all the necessary information on the weather and water flows. And secondly, to provide, that is to say, to transfer to the regional government all the resources it requires and exist to respond to the crisis. Therefore, the question, ladies and gentlemen, is whether the Spanish government fulfilled these responsibilities, and the answer is yes, it did.
Well, let's cross then to Madrid to speak to correspondent Sarah Morris, who joins us from there. Sarah, what have we heard so far? What could we hear as this progresses?
This was the Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez defending himself and his central government, which is socialist left-wing, from the accusation that they could have done much more to prevent the loss of lives, particularly in Valencia. But of course, those floods also hit in Malaga and in Castilla-La Mancha. And the Prime Minister basically said that the competences are not ambiguous in terms of civil protection. He said it's the central government's job to issue the weather warnings, to measure the levels of the rivers, but it is the regional government's job, he said, to send out warnings to citizens to tell them to stay indoors if necessary. And that alert, of course, to the text, to people's telephones, went out, gone 8 o'clock in the evening of that Tuesday, the 29th of October. And many people were already watching people floating past and cars floating past. Many people were already trapped in that water. The Prime Minister said the regional system didn't fail. Some people in very high positions weren't up to the level of their responsibility. The warnings were issued. The information arrived. Another thing is whether those institutions, what they did with that information. A clear attack on Carlos Mazón, the Conservative leader of the Valencia province, and meeting those criticisms, as Sanchez saw it, that he could have sent in the army anyway to help rescue people. He basically said that that can be dangerous, that he had, that the Defence Ministry had got the army ready to be deployed at a minute's notice once the Valencia government asked formally for them. And that didn't really wash today in the Parliament with the Conservative opposition. The leader, Alberto Núñez Feijóo, rounded on Sanchez, saying that the government has the resources, the central government has the resources, and that people, as he said that people would not forgive Sanchez for abandoning them. And he also referred to a vote that went ahead on Wednesday, the day after the main flooding, when the region of Valencia was devastated. And he said that Pedro Sanchez had chosen to go ahead with a vote in the Parliament to do with reforming the management of the state television. And the Conservative opposition basically says that that was immoral.
Sarah, we shouldn't forget, of course, that during all of this, people are still really battling, aren't they, to bring their lives, to turn their lives around in the region of Valencia. Tell us what the situation there is like now.
They certainly are, and we shouldn't forget that for some families, they haven't got the closure of knowing where their family members died. There are still 5 people who are being searched for, and that would bring that death toll up from 222 people in Valencia. Of course, there were another 7 who died in Castilla-La Mancha and 1 in Malaga. But people are trying to save their businesses. They're trying to get their homes back up and running. And in many cases, they are having to shovel out still lots and lots of mud. We saw a demonstration on Saturday, Stuart, because there are still 30 schools in Valencia Valencia that are closed, and the teachers and the parents are basically saying that they have been left to do that clean-up operation on their own. They want more resources because there are 13,000 children who can't go to their normal school. They're already quite traumatised by what has happened in the region, and they need to get back to some form of normality. Now, the Prime Minister said that there would be another aid package announced tomorrow for about 2.3 billion euros, and some of that money will be going to help people buy new cars or second-hand cars because about 120,000 people lost their cars. Many of them use and rely on those cars to get to their workplace.